What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the all-new 2019 Toyota RAV4. And huge thanks to Toyota for flying me all the way out here at beautiful Carmel, California to review the brand new RAV4 for you guys today. So about the RAV4, well, I really have started to love the looks of it. You know, it was revealed at the Detroit Auto Show in January, and back then it was a little more radical. I think now it's kind of grown on me, and I really do love it. I think it's like a nice cross between like a mini 4Runner, mini Highlander in a lot of ways, a more truck-like look to the RAV4, which I think is really welcome. You know, it's a little bit wider, a little bit stubbier with shorter overhangs, although the wheelbase is actually longer. It's actually got a little bit more ground clearance now, although the center of gravity is actually lower than before, so should drive a lot better. It's on the all-new TNGA platform as well, and so it looks really cool though. Especially I love this blue color, it really pops here on this XLE trim. Going down to the sides here, you can see the fenders are a little bit flared out, just to kind of give you a suggestion of more off-road rugged looks there, and I think it actually looks very good. I also love the C-pillar treatment there with a little breakup you have with a little black line, and also on some of the RAV4 models you can also get a two-tone roof, either in a white color or black, which is also really cool. Two-toning, I'm really glad that's kind of coming back a little bit. Toyota's kind of leading the charge with that, and I think it looks fantastic on the RAV4s that have that. Going out back, again, just very nice and attractive. You know, it's a little bit more evolutionary, I think. It does resemble the old RAV4 a little bit, but it's a lot more squared off, a lot sharper now, and again, you have a little bit more of an off-road look to it, and I think it looks really good out back there as well. And so overall, from just about every single angle, I think this is visually a lot more exciting than the previous RAV4 and looks really great. Right, for the interior of the all-new 2019 RAV4, well, it's a very nice place to be. So we are in the adventure trim currently, and so that's a little bit sportier on the outside, a little more off-road looking. But on the inside here, I love the orange accents you with the adventure trim. It's really, really cool. But anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats, really soft, amazingly soft, comfortable seats here in the RAV4. Leather here in the Adventure as well, and I really like this little pattern you have on them. They're perforated, they're heated and cooled here. That's an option for those ventilated seats. You know, obviously you have to go up to the higher trim levels to get the nicer features, but I'm just so impressed by these seats. They have excellent bolstering too. It's actually a little bit on the sportier side. You have nice large torso bolstering here that holds you in place pretty well, and the thigh bolstering is also pretty tall in the way that it comes up. I mean, this is still a very easy car to get in and out of. They're not, you know, racy seats by any means, but just they hold you in place a little bit better than you would get, you know, with some flatter seats in previous crossovers. And so I actually really love these seats. They're so comfortable. Next though is the steering wheel here in the RAV4, which is pretty similar to other modern Toyota steering wheels, with the usual buttons here on them, you know, to control the gauge cluster and cruise control and a few other basic things like volume and things like that. But it has a really great 9.3 grip, nice little 10 and 2 notches, nicely leather wrapped here, and just it's just a really nice thickness, a little bit thicker, you know, but just feels really substantial, just high quality, and a nice feeling steering wheel. Speaking of nice feeling stuff, a lot of the materials in here are nice and soft touch. You know, for the tops of the doors here, you know, all the elbow points are very nice and soft. Even the dash pad here is actually pretty squishy, and I mean, not something you touch very often, but it's nice that just feels a little higher quality. There are a few spots where it's still hard plastic. For example, right by the door pull here is all hard plastic, and also unfortunately by your knees here it's not padded, and so, you know, if you're someone that's a little bit larger with legs that do rest up against the transmission tunnel area here, then, you know, that would be nice to have that padded, but you know, it still is nice everywhere else. And like I said, it feels properly rugged as well for a crossover into the adventure trim. You know, they don't want everything to be super soft. This isn't a Lexus after all, but it is very, very nice for what it is. Next are the gauges here on the RAV4, which this one has the optional center digital portion. Now you can get traditional analog gauges, and even on the digital one here, you know, many of the gauges are analog. You know, you still have an analog tachometer and the analog fuel and coolant gauges there, but nice large digital portion there in the middle. You can have the torque split up there all the time, showing you what the four-wheel drive system is doing, which is very cool. And especially whenever we were doing a little bit of off-roading earlier, you can kind of see that really working out the traction, which was very cool to see in the display. Otherwise, it's all your basic stuff, you know, trip information, fuel economy, audio can be displayed there as well, which is nice to have, and a couple other things. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, again, this one being higher trim, you have the 8-inch touchscreen system that Toyota has here. They call it the N-Tune 3.0 system, and it's a really great head unit here. It's touchscreen, very easy to use, has a nice volume and tune knob, which have this cool pattern on the rubberized knobs, and I actually really like the way that looks and feels. And you know, it's a good system. It has Apple CarPlay, unfortunately no Android Auto still, but does have Apple CarPlay, which is nice. And you know, otherwise, you know, satellite radio, all that type of stuff is within easy reach, very easy to navigate through. And this one also has the upgraded JBL stereo, which has 11 speakers instead of the usual 6 that you have in other RAV4s, and gives you a little subwoofer there in the trunk as well. And I also, speaking of the speakers, I love the design you have on the speaker grills here with a little RAV4 badge too. Just another fun little touch to kind of set it apart from the rest. But yeah, so I'll test out that sound system as I'm driving, but still nice you can have that premium stereo option here in the RAV4. Coming down, you have your climate control knobs. You have, you know, dual zone climate control, so that's what these 2 knobs here are for. But I just really like the design of it. Again, more of this cool rubberized, you know, knobs that have a cool pattern on them. And I like how they kind of stick out a little bit more of an off-road truck type of look to it, which I really appreciate. Nice little, you know, digital readout. And then right beneath that, you'll have your seat controls, which is nice to see. And so I really like that. Again, just a little different out of the ordinary and more interesting looking than, you know, a boring, just flat setup you'd see in many other competitors. Coming down, you'll see your first cubby, which is also a Qi wireless charging pad here in this Adventure version, and now that's an option again, otherwise this would just be a nice large cubby. You also see a power outlet and a USB jack and an auxiliary jack in there, which is nice to see all those out in the open. And this pad here for the wireless charging pad is rubberized, so it does grip your phone a little bit, but it's still, my phone, I have an iPhone 10, still can slide around a decent amount there on that pad. I kind of wish it was a little more secure, but nice to have the wireless charging option there. And then you have your nice chunky shifter here for controlling, of course, park, reverse, all that type of stuff. And I really like the way that feels. And you have a bunch of buttons here for drive modes as well, which is again part of the Adventure trim. If you have one of the less, you know, higher trim levels, then you also just have a more basic set of buttons here. But nice to have this little knob. You know, you can go to mud and sand and rock, and we did do some off-roading, and it was very impressive on that. And so cool to have all those buttons there. Other storage spaces though in the RAV4, it's really got a lot of creative, cool little spots. I mean, you have your traditional pockets here on the doors, which does have a bottle holder, which is great to see. But then also still on the left-hand side here, you'll see this other little pocket, which is great. Probably not big enough for a smartphone over there, but you can fit a bunch of other stuff in there. You know, smaller objects fit great. And you also have another little creative space over here on the passenger side, right above the glove box, and that also has a nice little lip to it, so you could fit stuff like a smartphone or something in there, and it has a little bit of a textured rubberized type feeling as well, so it would hold on to things a little bit better than a hard plastic little shelf would. So that's actually a really nice little inclusion as well. Otherwise, you have 2 deep cup holders here, which are cool, and I like the orange outline once again on those. And then you have the center armrest, which is nice and softly padded, feels really great for resting your elbow on. And anyway, you open that up, and then you'll see a nice deep cubby that has 2 USB jacks right in there as well, which is great to see that additional hookups there. And they're just charging USB jacks. If you want to use data, you have to plug it into the one up front here. But still nice to have those additional USB jacks there. And so overall, all things considered, it's an excellent amount of storage space for an SUV of this size. Backseat space in the RAV4 is excellent here. You know, that longer wheelbase, which I think helps with the interior space there in the back, because I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself, I easily have about 5 inches of legroom to spare. I mean, very spacious and a massive amount of headroom. I mean, this is a boxy SUV after all, but even among other SUVs, this seems to have more headroom. I mean, just a massive amount of space, a nice little cutout there to give you even more space as well. Now, you would probably lose a little bit of that headroom if you had the panoramic moonroof, which is optional here in the RAV4. This one has the regular moonroof, so you have more space there in the back. But other things, you know, you have a fold down center armrest with 2 cup holders in it. You have bottle holders in the doors, and then you also have air vents there in the back, which is a nice inclusion, as well as 2 more USB jacks back there, which is great. You know, if the kids want to plug in their stuff, or everyone wants to be connected on a road trip, 4 adults or something, you can all have everything all powered up. And so great to have the USB jacks right out in the open there too. Another nice inclusion is that the rear seats, in addition to, of course, folding flat, do also recline a little bit, which is very nice. It gives you a little bit of extra comfort on longer trips, and so that's great they included that as well. Cargo space in the back of the RAV4 here is really good. So, I mean, it's a massive amount of space, very wide, very long, and pretty deep space there. A flat load floor because, you know, just so if you want to fold down those rear seats, you can have a nice long flat area there. But you can actually lower that that floor, and there's another little slot that you can put it in. So if you don't need it to be totally flat, you want a little more space there, you do have a little bit of additional space there to maximize your cargo space there in the back. You'll also see underneath there, of course, the spare tire. And so a really nice amount of space there for the rear cargo area. And I think it's very competitive with the rest, and it's a really nice large amount of space. All right, so start and go for a drive. The RAV4s here have the newer Toyota key. It's just a plastic key, a little cheap feeling, honestly, but it is nice and light and pretty slim. So I do appreciate that. I do just wish it was maybe a little nicer feeling, but still, it's cool. It has the RAV4 logo on it there. This one has the number 3 there since this is a press vehicle and they label them. But otherwise, you know, it's a pretty nice key. But of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, and push button starts. You just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. Alright, so setting off in the 2019 Toyota RAV4. So I'm starting off first here in the hybrid version, which is actually the more powerful of the two versions of the RAV4 here. So you do get a little bit more horsepower instead of the 203 of 219 horsepower here. They both run the same 2.5 liter dynamic force 4-cylinder. It's just detuned here for the hybrid version, and it fills in and gives you that extra power with an electric motor there. But first thing you're noticing, at least me right off the bat, is the excellent visibility, which is much improved here on the new RAV4s. So forward visibility is excellent, nice large windshield, hood drops down pretty well, although you do have this hood that has a little more contour to it than you did before, but still, you know, doesn't get in your way or anything. But the greatest thing is these excellently thin A-pillars. You know, they move the mirror, the side mirror, onto the door instead of the A-pillar, and they gave you those little windows in addition to just a nice thin A-pillar. And so forward visibility is just excellent. I mean, very easy to see forward. View out of the sides is of course great with these side windows that are nice and large, typical SUV fashion. View out of the back is also great, and you do have this camera rearview mirror, which is a new thing they're offering on some of the higher versions of the RAV4 here for 2019. And so with that, you know, even if you had a bunch of cargo in the back, you would still be able to have a perfectly clear view of you know, the road behind you, and so that's nice. But we're right onto some corners here, very, very tight, and so this has the CVT in the hybrid version. So whenever you're accelerating out of a corner, it just goes nuts, and you know, kind of goes in one of those lower ratios, but it's always shifting around a little bit in typical CVT fashion. But I will say the handling is really good. So we're on the new TNGA platform, and the wheelbase is a little bit longer than before, so it gives you a little bit more of a planted ride. And I mean, the body roll is really non-existent, even though this is the heaviest of the RAV4s here, and the limited, you know, with all the tech stuff you get in the limited plus the hybrid configuration. These are around 3,800 pounds here, and that's as heavy as a RAV4 gets. They did a good job of keeping them pretty light for the regular gas versions as well. You know, those start around 3,300 pounds and go up from there, again, depending on equipment and trim level. But, you know, it feels pretty good. I mean, again, we're talking about an SUV here. We're on 235 wide all-season tires, so, you know, not the sportiest. I will say that at least compared to the, you know, this hybrid version compared to the competition, it does handle very well, but I still think the CX-5 it feels a little bit sportier. But again, I'll reserve judgment until I've driven the normal gas version and taken it on a few higher speed corners and things like that as well. But the hybrid does a really good job of, you know, only using that additional power whenever it needs to. I mean, it's very fuel efficient. The fuel economy here on the hybrid versions is, I think, like 9 mpg higher than what it is in the gas version. And so, I mean, the numbers are just astronomical. So the EPA numbers here for the hybrid are 41 in the city, 37 on the highway, for a combined average of 39. And so, I mean, for an SUV, those numbers are very, very impressive. And, you know, considering there aren't a whole lot of hybrid options out there in this segment still, I think that's a very compelling case, you know, for the RAV4 if you want better fuel economy. And it's only $800 more for the hybrid over a regular gas. Now, like I said, you lose the regular automatic you get in the you know, normal gas-powered RAV4, and you know, so those types of things. You have the weight penalty, so there are a few little compromises. But if you're looking for the most economical RAV4, you get the most power and you get the best fuel economy for only $800 $100 more. And so that makes the hybrid here a very compelling case, and it drives very well. It's pretty intelligent too. They even said there's a feature in the hybrid where it will learn your driving habits and will learn the roads over time and figure out, if you're always sitting at an intersection for 5 minutes straight, it'll know to turn it off and kind of learn all that type of stuff, which is really intelligent and very cool that it does all that. So, if you buy one of these and own a hybrid, I think the efficiency would just get better and better as time goes on, the more and more you drive it, which is awesome. Now we're just kind of cruising around here at lower speeds, and it's pretty quiet. These roads are a little bit nicer. Earlier there's a little more road noise because those roads were a little rougher, but it's very refined, and it's just a generally pleasant vehicle to drive. Also, there are still driving modes here for the hybrid version. You have a sport mode and things like that, although it doesn't make a ton of difference, but you do have these manual shift points. It'll do 6 of them, but it doesn't really seem like it really makes much of a difference, interestingly. It's I don't know. What do you think, Sofyan? I have Sofyan here, by the way. Switching to the other camera.
I probably would never use the manual mode in this thing. It's cool that Toyota gives it to you, but I think they should have put paddles if they're going to call this the XSE, the sportiest version.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. So yeah, we're in the XSE trim, and yeah, that's the sportiest one, but like you mentioned in your video, you only have the XSE for the hybrid, which is a little bit unfortunate for enthusiasts that might not want the hybrid and they're a little turned off by that. I wish, I'm still in this manual mode. It is not holding on to any kind of set ratio, which is a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a different CVT from like the new Corolla hatch we drove, but that had like 10 speeds, virtual speeds, while this only has 6. So, I can see why it is different, but I kind of just think, why couldn't they use the new CVT in the Corolla with that, that first physical gear? I think that could have been an interesting option.
Yeah, and even if they had to ditch the first physical gear, even if they just had the same programming, right, so that you were able to actually hold gears. And I thought there was a lot of fun driving the CVT Corolla. And I was like, this is an amazing CVT, probably actually the most fun CVT I've ever used, honestly, in the Corolla.
Right.
So I'm a little bummed it didn't make the transition to the RAV4 here, but I don't know, maybe RAV4 customers are a little bit different.
I think honestly, like when you put your foot down, it's pretty responsive, and that's what's important for people who buy this kind of a vehicle. So at least Toyota kind of nailed that. So basically, if you're an enthusiast, I think that it looks a lot better, but in terms of the driving feel that you're probably looking for, you'll probably just want to stick with a gas model.
Yeah, there's a nice punch from this little electric right up immediately. As soon as you start tipping in, you can feel the nose lift up, and then the gas engine has to continue on with the job of propelling you forward. And I have too much traffic to be able to do a little acceleration run here yet. But it feels punchy for sure. I don't think I would complain about the speed really, unless I'm merging onto a high-speed highway or something. But around town, I think this is totally sufficient. All right, so let's turn on to this straight road here and see how the acceleration feels from a stop. And here we go. Okay, so yeah, you get that little bit of a jump from the electric motor, and then that CVT just winds away. And like I said, it gets up and goes pretty well. Again, we're talking about a hybrid RAV4. It's not going to be anything super sporty or amazing. It would be kind of cool if they had a sport trim that had the same full horsepower of the regular gas version, its own 203 horsepower plus the electric boost. Kind of give it a little bit more of a horsepower jump over the gas version, but it does a good job of feeling pretty punchy. I think it feels pretty similar like the CX-5 as far as power goes, although again the CVT just kind of throws me off. I prefer the regular automatic, so I'm looking forward to driving the gas version and seeing how that 8-speed automatic feels. I'm sure it'll feel a lot more natural. But yeah, so overall I think the hybrid, obviously appeals to people who want the maximum efficiency. If you don't care about that as much, then maybe the gas version would be the better one for you. So let's go hop in the gas version and see how that drives. All right, so now I'm in an XLE Premium all-wheel drive one with just the gas engine, no hybrid assist. And this one also doesn't have like the digital gauges, but you still have a really nice little display still showing you your all-wheel drive like I was mentioning earlier, and how it's splitting the power up. And you also don't have that controller like you had in the Adventure. You just have the buttons instead. And but otherwise, it's still very nice here. You still have the larger infotainment display here, and still just really nice to drive. But now we're up on some higher speed roads here. And one thing that I'm noticing about all these RAV4s is just the ride. The ride is so incredibly smooth. And it's just, I mean, a lot of SUVs are tuned for comfort these days, but the fact that this handles as well as it does and still has such a smooth, comfortable ride, I mean, it is pillowy soft. I mean, even like really big bumps, it soaks up. I mean, you feel them a little bit, but it is so well absorbed. And so, I mean, that combined with these super soft seats that I was admiring earlier, I mean, it's just a supremely comfortable crossover to cruise down the road, and it's really great. I could see myself driving for hours and hours and not getting fatigued just because it's just so comfortable. Another thing to note, so these roads are a little bit on the rougher side in some spots here, and so you do hear a little bit more road noise, and I also am getting a little bit of wind noise, and so that'll also depend on the trim. Like I think, with the Adventure trim, you have the crossbars on the roof rack, which are going to add a little bit of noise and stuff, but I've noticed a little bit of noise around the side mirrors, it seems. Again, it's not intrusive or anything, just something that I'm noticing, where maybe some of the competitors are a little bit more quiet inside, but honestly, this still just feels really nice. Like I said, the ride and everything, it just makes it for a really nice thing to cruise in. And of course, if you turn on the radio or something, you don't hear that wind noise at all anymore, and you just listen to the great JBL stereo. Other things to note here now, since we're in the gas version, we have a regular 8-speed automatic transmission here, and it's pretty responsive. It's funny though, because the tachometer seems to jump up to a higher RPM before the engine actually does. So it's like the tach makes it seem like it's super responsive, but it's actually not quite that responsive in reality. But I like the enthusiasm of the tach. It really it loves to just spring into action there. But this 8-speed does a good job of, I mean, it doesn't waste any time. If you're giving it over half throttle, it's like, all right, let's go. And there isn't any kind of laziness. Some other vehicles, like, the Tacoma has a little bit of a lazier throttle response, and something that, I'm not a huge fan of, but this is very nice and responsive. Throttle response is really great. Again, since you have the naturally aspirated engine, you don't have any kind of turbo to wait around on or any kind of weird stuff going on. It's just very direct, very, very responsive. I love that about it. Another thing that really adds to the comfort here of the RAV4 is the steering weight, which is a little bit on the lighter side. It still feels precise and accurate and enjoyable to use. It still has a good amount of feeling, for a crossover. It's an electrically assisted, steering here, but feels very sharp and direct, just like the throttle response. And so, it all just feels nicely in tune, and I really appreciate that. All right, let's do an acceleration here in the gas-powered RAV4. Up and goes pretty well. So the gas versions, I think about 0.4 seconds slower 0 to 60. I think about 8.2 seconds is the 0 to 60 because again it uses that 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. It does 203 horsepower in the gas version, 184 pound-feet of torque, and I mean, for a crossover it's enough. It's not enough to make me giggle like a maniac or anything like that, but it certainly is going to be sufficient for RAV4 buyers. It's going to be plenty to merge onto the highway and totally sufficient for any type of normal driving that you're doing, and so it's a good amount of power. Like I said, they did a good job on keeping the weight low on these as well. So this XLE Premium, for example, since it doesn't have all the hybrid stuff weighing it down, this only weighs just under 3,500 pounds, 3,490 to be exact, and that's with the all-wheel drive too, which adds a little bit of weight. But so I mean, that's a very reasonable weight for an SUV that has as much room as this does, and as much tech and luxury features as it does. And so I think that really helps with the acceleration, but also helps with the handling. But as we're going around some gentle corners here along the coast, it's beautiful here. But the handling is really, really good. I mean, I don't have any super tight corners here currently to test it out on. But whenever I was testing even the hybrid version, it was amazing how flat the handling was in that. And with this, you just have lighter weight, so it feels like it handles even better. I mean, there's very little body roll, even whenever you're going back and forth here in your lane. It's very, very flat and feels great. And let's test out the manual shifting here. So there's sport mode whenever you just slap the transmission over into the S mode here. It doesn't put it into manual mode yet. There aren't any paddle shifters, so it's just the shifter here, and that's the only way you can manually shift it. But we can go down, and it doesn't hold the gear. That's the only thing. whenever, you know, if I'm in like a higher gear or something, it still is just shifting on its own. So really, I don't even see this really doing anything. It's just kind of seems to have a mind of its own, which is a little unfortunate. But you know, honestly, you're in a RAV4, so I mean, how many people are going to be manually shifting a RAV4? You're better off leaving it automatic. It's still very responsive and figures out what you want to do very quickly. So I don't really think there's a need for manual shifting, honestly, anyway. So not a big deal there. So I mentioned earlier how the fuel economy on the hybrid is just through the roof, and so clearly if you're worried about fuel economy, that's the one to get. I mean, it's like 10 better than what you get here on the gas version, but the gas version still, for an SUV of this size, isn't bad, you know. So this one with the 8-speed automatic and just the regular gas engine gets 26 in the city, 33 on the highway, for a combined average of 29 mpg, which, like I said, is still very, very respectable for an all-wheel drive SUV like this. And so I think, you know, it still isn't going to be breaking the bank on gas if you don't go for the hybrid version. And I do like the extra responsiveness and the sharpness you get here with the gas version. So although the numbers are very impressive on the hybrid, I think the gas would probably still be my pick. Again, it would depend on how much stop and go traffic you're in and things like that. But that CVT is just a little too all over the place, whereas I really like the 8-speed automatic in this, so how responsive it is and how eager it is to accelerate and get up and go whenever you want it to. So as far as pricing here for the RAV4, that's also very competitive. So these start for the base model LE, those start at $25,500. That's before destination, which is about $1,000, $1,045 to be exact. So, you know, in reality, you're looking like $26.5 there for a base RAV4. This one is the XLE Premium with the all-wheel drive. So this one that I'm currently driving, as tested, would be just under $32,000, which still isn't bad for, I mean, this one you still get the heated seats, you still get the nice leather upholstery, the larger infotainment system, the JBL stereo. All those things are very, very much appreciated, and you know, I think totally appropriate, you know, pricing for a vehicle of this type. I mean, you have so many nice soft touch materials, although this one has a little less than the Adventure. For example, the tops of the doors on this one are hard plastic, where it was more padded in the Adventure trim. So again, but the Adventure is a little bit more expensive than this trim level, but still is a very nice feeling interior. Speaking of this JBL stereo, though, I was able to actually play with it a little bit here, and it sounds really good. It's, you know, 11 speakers, 800 watts, and it's a very clear, strong stereo. The only interesting thing is you really have to crank it up to get higher volume. Like, I mean, a quiet volume on this is 23, and then like if you want to have it pretty loud, it's like 50. So it's just a lot of spinning of the volume knob. Not a big deal though. I mean, it's just numerically, you know, they just have it more fine-tuned, so you have to really crank it up versus, you know, some of the other more powerful systems where you turn it up to like 8 and it's like blasting your ears out. So I think that's just the way they set it up. Not a big deal. It sounds phenomenal though. I really, you know, it's got good bass. You have that little, you know, subwoofer there in the cargo area, but it's not overpowering bass. You know, in the normal setting, of course, you can crank up the bass if you want, but some of the others, even in the normal setting, the default setting, it really wants to be heavy-handed with the bass. This not so much, which I actually appreciate, because it's some, I think, try and compensate and make them seem more powerful just with a heavy-hitting bass. This doesn't have it. It just has a really strong, you know, crisp vocals and stuff, and so I'm no audiophile, but to my ears it sounds pretty good. One nice thing with all the RAV4s, especially when you go down to the lower ones, a phenomenal value, is the Toyota Safety Sense 2.0 is standard on these, on every single RAV4. So that means you get standard adaptive cruise control, full speed, comes all the way to a stop, adaptive cruise control, which is super nice if you're in traffic and things like that. Also, it has the Toyota Lane Keep Assist, which allows you to actually keep the car centered in your lane, which helps with driver fatigue. It still is not like an autonomous system or anything like that. That's still a long ways off, but you know, it does help you to keep your vehicle in your lane and you know, help with a little bit of the fatigue, again, if you're driving for long periods of time, so you're not wandering in your lane or anything. So that's much appreciated. And then it has, of course, all the other autonomous braking, all that type of stuff. The only thing that isn't standard is blind spot monitoring. That's something that's an additional separate option, but very easily to get here, and you know, is standard once you go up to some of the higher trims. But in the lower trims, that is an option still. But another thing that is standard, speaking of other safety things though, is LED headlamps are also standard here in the RAV4 in every model, and that's very much appreciated at nighttime. Give you that excellent visibility with LED headlamps, which is great to see as a standard feature as well. And so overall, I think Toyota has a phenomenal value and another huge hit on their hands here. I mean, the RAV4 is the #1 selling non-pickup truck vehicle in America. So of course, the F-150 is the sales leader, but then right beneath that is the RAV4. It's the best-selling vehicle, of course, for Toyota as well. And so they know this is the most important model for them, and they wanted to make sure they got it right. And I think they really nailed everything. Like I said, I love all the additional little storage spaces. I love the comfort, the comfortable ride, the great driving dynamics, the very responsive, driver-focused setup for everything. With very sharp throttle response. Brakes feel great. Start biting right at the top of the pedal. The transmission is very responsive here in the gas version, and then in the hybrid, for only $800 more, you get 10 extra MPG in every category there, and a little bit of additional power as well, without sacrificing any kind of cargo room or anything like that. So no matter which RAV4 you pick, I mean, you really can't go wrong. They're all spectacular and great values in their own way, and they're great driving vehicles too now. It used to be SUVs in the past. It was always a compromise, didn't handle quite as well and stuff. I mean, yeah, this is still going to be a little bit of not quite as sharp of handling as something like the Corolla hatchback or something like that, but for an SUV, I mean, they've come so far with the handling, and it's really something that feels so car-like in its handling, while you still have great visibility. You have a nice high seating position, very easy to get in and out of, which is a huge draw, I think, for these crossovers these days. It's just people that just don't want to be climbing in and out of a car. It's much easier here in an SUV, and I totally get that. You have the additional cargo space there, which is massive here in these new RAV4s. Tons of back seat space, just a very roomy, great vehicle to live with, I think, and so Toyota realizes that, and that's why they made sure they enhanced all the things that needed to be enhanced and left all the things alone that all the things that people appreciate about it. Didn't make it too sporty or too different. It still is just building upon the great RAV4 reputation they've had for a long time, and should be phenomenal reliability wise and stuff, considering we still have a normal naturally aspirated engine, hasn't gone to turbo like some of the other competitors and stuff, so you don't have any worries with that here. Just a good reliable engine that should last a long time, and so yeah, just a great package overall. But anyway, huge thanks once again to Toyota for providing me with the opportunity to review the new RAV4 here for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the new RAV4 in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.